Hi everyone, and welcome to the People to People Group 2025 Australia Market Update. My name is Liz Punchin and I'm the Director of our Victorian business. On today's show, we're going to look at what are the key trends that are impacting the Australian employment and labour market in 2025. We'll be joined today by Brooke Lord, who is the Head of Advocacy and Policy at the RCSA, and also Guy Davey, who is the Senior Manager of Talent Solutions at LinkedIn, to unpack the key trends shaping the Australian employment and job market in 2025. Is the job market really bouncing back? What challenges are employers facing in 2025? And what trends should Australian businesses prepare for by 2030? But first, let's kick things off by looking at what's really happening in the Australian recruitment market right now. So you can see on the screen here some of the trends that we have researched and prepared for this year's market report. So you can see that job ads are down, but applications are up. So job vacancies dropped by 11%, while applications have risen by 22%, indicating that there is more competition among job seekers. Also looking at the wages versus inflation debate. So wage growth is steady, just over 3%, while inflation has eased at 2.4%, giving workers a small real income gain. Also, in terms of hiring confidence, only 63% of employers feel confident in finding right talent, which is down by 4% year on year. In terms of job seeker anxiety, confidence among job seekers has dropped 6%, with just 54% feeling positive about landing a job. In terms of unemployment, it has increased to 4.2%, up from a recent low of 3.2%. And then looking at the quality over quantity issue, so employers cite irrelevant applications as a top challenge, especially in New South Wales, Victoria and WA. If we look more closely at the state markets, so in terms of WA trends, the highest job seeker activity is in 73%, but job ads are down by 12.9%. Private sector wage growth leads at 3.5%. In terms of Victoria, we have seen the largest job ad drop at 17%, plus challenges with ghosting and candidate reliability. It would seem that it is an employer's market with more candidates applying per role, but the quality and reliability remains a hiring hurdle. And then finally, with job seeker dynamics, it has increased activity, but lowered confidence due to fewer roles and more competition. So all of these insights that we've just shared and the conversations that we're about to have are drawn directly from our 2025 Employment and Salary Trends report. This comprehensive report is built off thousands of survey responses from job seekers and employers across Australia, looking at the latest workplace hiring and job seeker trends. If you'd like a deeper dive into salaries, benefits, and leading trends across your market, request a copy by scanning the QR code or clicking on the link in the comments below. To break down more about what's actually happening in the market, we are joined today first by Brooke Lord, Head of Advocacy and Policy at RCSA. The Recruitment Consulting and Staffing Association, the RCSA, is a peak industry body for recruitment and staffing in Australia and New Zealand. Representing member firms and accredited professionals, RCSA promotes industry standards, drives professional practice, and provides education, support, and advocacy across the world of work. So thank you for joining us today, Brooke.
Thanks for having me, Liz. It's a pleasure to be here.
Excellent. So let's jump in. So you and the RCSA work closely with a wide range of businesses and employers across Australia. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest challenges you're currently facing in the market?
Oh, look, I think the message hasn't changed monstrously in recent times. Certainly the big challenge has been around softening in hiring intention across the market, a little bit lower business confidence and a reticence to really, we're hearing feedback still that businesses that scaled up and held on to talent during skills demand, great skills demand over COVID and post-COVID, and now when people leave, often restructuring rather than rehiring, trying to do with what they can, move things around. So that's been a big challenge in market. I think one of the other things that we have had fed back just recently and a little bit more recently is that, there's a real challenge around skill levels of in-house hiring teams at the moment, that perhaps that's depleted a little bit and that, there's a greater reliance, which is not a bad thing, there's a greater reliance on recruiters and staffing to really help source those persistent skills gap challenges that we have.
Definitely. That's interesting. And from an employer hiring confidence, it is dropping in Australia year on year, 4%, as we noted before. So have you seen businesses becoming more cautious in their approach, or are they recalibrating in response to ongoing skill shortages and high competition for talent?
I think it's a funny thing, but I do think they're really navigating times we haven't seen before, if it's a fair thing to observe. I think what's challenging is that historically when we've seen the economy slow down a little and confidence dwindle, we've actually seen a time where, to the point you've made earlier, we've got additional candidates in market, unemployment is a bit higher. Now, I know we've seen a move on unemployment levels, but participation rates are as good as they've ever been. And unemployment levels right now still remain, historically very, very low. And so I think we're seeing businesses trying to navigate a scenario where what they're expecting will come to them in times of tight market is not coming as it has historically. We're still seeing persistent skill shortages in sort of 30 to 35% of occupation types. And I do think there is still really solid demand. So while we have got candidates in some areas and greater availability of talent, in others we're seeing persistent skills shortage. And I do think our industry and business themselves are all just adjusting to that changing dynamic. It's certainly an environment that's not traditional by historic experience.
Yes, definitely. You're spot on. There's some roles where it is still very much candidate short, and good candidates and good talent is moving really, really quickly. So flexibility remains a top priority for job seekers in 2025. How have you seen local employers responding to the work from anywhere trend? And are you seeing more geo-based pay scales, or is the national market still largely flat?
It's an interesting one, this as well. I do think it's part of a navigation piece also. While there are still a number of employers who are very actively leveraging their flexible work policies to attract talent, and it's doing it quite successfully, we're seeing, still a large number looking for a hybrid and significant contact time. And I think post-COVID, there's a trend to sort of push for contact where possible, whilst if we look at now versus, 5 years ago, I mean, the amount of flexible work and remote work is enormously high, and it will remain that way. But I do think in terms of shifts, I think people are holding, and I do feel there's a bit of a hold and wait and watch pattern going on at the moment, where there'd been such demand for talent and there'd been such flexibility by employers about trying to attract talent that they provided remote working opportunities, flexible working opportunities in a great way. I feel like there's a little bit in the market shift where people are waiting to see if the dial will change on demand and supply, and if they can start putting in place more measures around contact. There's certainly a cultural wait and watch feel that we're getting back from market, but many of them in market are leveraging what they've got with flexible working to attract talent. What we are seeing, rather than flexible work and a monstrous jump in remote work, we're seeing a real trend toward offshore employing. So in that sense, employing directly, but offshore talent who are based offshore. So that's a bigger trend I'm seeing on remote workforce.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, it definitely, you're right, flexibility is here to stay, but we're certainly seeing the trends for more time in office, particularly in that training and induction phase, that is creeping into conversations. again as well.
It's more cultural than in writing on paper or in the job ads, but certainly I'm feeling that culturally from the industry.
Yes, for sure. So thank you so much for your insights, Brooke. That was really good to hear what you're experiencing and hearing from your contacts in the market as well. So we'll shift gears now and we'll talk to our second guest, which is Guy Davey, the Senior Manager of Talent Solutions at LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the world's largest professional networking platform built for career development, business connections, and job opportunities. With over 1 billion members globally, it's where professionals connect, share insights, and grow their careers, whether it's hiring, job hunting, or building their brand. So thank you for joining us today, Guy.
I don't think I could have said it better myself. Well done.
There you go.
That was a fantastic boilerplate. That's perfect.
Well, let's jump straight in. So the Australian labour market saw an 11% drop in job ads, but a 22% rise in applications in 2025. So what does this tell us about the current labour market dynamics, and how do you expect this to evolve over the year?
So it's a really interesting question. I think I'll start with quoting our chief economist, Karen Kimbrough, who says, hiring in most countries and most industries is still down year on year, but the slowdown has begun to show signs of moderation. And what we talk about is really stabilization. And a lot of sectors that got hit hard in technology, professional services and media. So what we are seeing is an increase in internal mobility instead. And that's kind of a very encouraging signs. Because what we're seeing is that if people can leverage internal hiring, they can accelerate organizational agility, as they probably phrase it. We'll play some fun facts. I think it's a good place to start. Okay. So what we see on our platform is like nearly 10,000 members are applying for a job every minute. So their activity is there. It's just slightly different. And I think Australia's in the top 5 countries for penetration of total workforce. So it's a good place to be in terms of Australia and LinkedIn. We had a recent talent trends report in 2025, and it does show that about 80% of the people we spoke to are Australian executives do plan to hire over the next 12 months. This is based on like 5,000 members at a VP level and above. To your point, the jobs have dropped, the applications have gone up. And I agree completely. We've seen about a 65% increase in job applications. If you dig a little deeper, I think this is probably a symptom by the fact there is less jobs, but it's also a really good lead indicator of market green shoots. Because what we do see as you follow the trends is that as job switching increases, it normally links to like confidence in the market. So we've stabilized, but we are going to go up. On the other side, it was, I think 60% of the respondents we spoke to do intend to look for a new role in FY26. So, if the intention to move is there and the opportunity to move is there, then we do see that people will switch. The last little bit I will say is that the job application is a funny one as a metric because it's normally like the last mile of the marathon. I think is a nice way to put it, because we also know it takes about 4 to 6 months worth of ongoing engagement that precedes the application. So for those listening out there, there's a lot of hard yards to do prior to the application, and there's a lot of work you need to do around employer branding, because jobs are very important for branding these days because they actually show what the opportunity is. But we do know that that the network effect of LinkedIn is fast becoming the primary connection between looking for a new role and finding a new role.
Yeah. Great. That's so interesting. And obviously, absolutely have the finger on the pulse and all that data to refer to. So, and with many sectors reporting higher volume of irrelevant applications, is this an automation issue, a branding problem, or a mismatch in job ad strategy?
So I think LinkedIn's got a unique moment here because we're a borderless platform. So as opportunity becomes global. But I think the sourcing for the roles is probably a small part of the maintaining the relevance in applications. As I say, I think jobs are a good part, and they need to be there to demonstrate opportunity for the people who are looking. But what we have seen is that the opportunity to target talent in a more proactive manner has never been better than before right now. I think it's one of the things that we're working on heavily, and our new product updates are actually going to give you the opportunity to probably to remove irrelevant candidates earlier in the fray. But what we do know is that I think having a multi-channel approach, including branding, including jobs, including active searches, and it kind of comes down to the point where if you are pro-sourcing candidate pools in advance of the need, with constant communication, that engagement we talked about, it does tend to have a big impact on the relevance of your candidates and the efficiency of your recruitment process. I suppose it's a good time to talk about quantity, because quite often the irrelevant candidates come through a large level of quantity. And there's a good thing about automation, and then there's probably the downside of automation, because I think quite often companies use or prioritize quantity as a great place to start. And when you're trying to automate things, and to Brooke's point earlier, the TA teams are much smaller these days. So there's a higher reliance on using automation. So we do see a lot more high volumes coming through, which is time consuming. I mean, AI can help you considerably in this space, as can recruitment companies like People to People or Edge Recruitment. But I also think there's also big jobs, what we call as a jobs mismatch. My organization work with recruitment companies in Australia and New Zealand. And I think the key area of development and education is finding the balance between writing a really, really great advert, which is up to date and it talks about everything that's required, versus cutting and pasting an old ad. So if you are getting relevant candidates, have a look at the process, have a look at what you're actually posting, and put yourself in the shoes of a candidate. Are you actually trying to uncover the right person for the right job?
Spot on, definitely. And lastly, one big focus over the last few years has been around salary and pay. So what feedback are your employers sharing about the rising candidate expectations? So especially when it comes to pay, flexibility and career growth.
So we talk about this a lot. I think it's important to recognize the role of the manager these days is so much more complicated and complex than ever before. From juggling team leadership to employee well-being, to their own well-being, to creating career opportunities, developing skills, mentor, coaching. I mean, there's 1,000 different things people to do. It's really quite overwhelming. What we're seeing is that whilst we don't really deal too much in salaries, that might be coming through in the future. You have the people like the Australian HR Institute expect to rise at 3%. The Mercer forecast, I think, is around 4%. Neither of which are sitting sort of within inflation. In new news yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the Fair Work Commission announced a 3.5% increase in minimum wage, which interestingly does surpass inflation. But what we talk about is what top talent is really looking for. And first and foremost, quite often they want to see their potential company leaders are being progressive. You know, they are sharing and demonstrating how they are learning, how they're developing, how they are engaging with new and emerging technology or new skills. The top 4 things that the top talent were looking for in our most recent survey was the first one was opportunity to work on innovative projects. So when you are posting jobs or when you are talking about your company, these are things that people want to see from you. Opportunity to learn new in-demand skills, which Brooke just talked about there. There's probably a legacy problem in that a lot of the companies didn't prioritize L&D and didn't prioritize updating skills, and now we're left with this potential skills gap. As Brooke said, flexible work arrangements are certainly in the top 4. And interestingly, which is obvious when you talk about it, the last one we've seen is that being surrounded by really highly talented employees, like sharing who they work with and the people that surround you on a daily basis, is becoming more and more and more important.
Yes, in our report as well, we look at those trends, and I would echo L&D progression and obviously continuing with that flexibility. We've been hearing that and seeing that. So really good point to include that in your ads to make sure that you're attracting the right candidates as well. So thank you, Guy. Really interesting to hear the data that you have access to as well. So why don't we bring Brooke back in, and we'll talk together about some different perspectives of the market. So Brooke, I'll start with yourself. So we'll start with one of the big focal points for many businesses across Australia. How have you seen the rising costs and economic uncertainty influencing hiring decisions in the Australian market?
Look, as I said, recruitment activity softened. There's no question the data says that. It tells us. And also job ads are significantly down year on year. But it's important to remember that those job ads, while they're down year on year, they're still substantially above pre-pandemic levels. And I do think we've got to remember as a country, we've just come off, hugely disruptive phase with COVID, and it had massive impacts on the labour market. And often we compare on the previous year or the prior year, and we really need to be looking at a longer term trajectory to see where trends are going. I do think, as I said, that's impacted confidence. There's less hiring activity, a lot more internal agility, as Guy put it, which I'd agree with. But there are persistent skill shortages. I mentioned earlier, I think 30-35% of particular occupation types are still in severe shortage, and I don't know that there's much comfort, in addressing those without significant migration. So it's important that people remember there's still a challenge and a race for talent. And I think that businesses getting their heads around that when they're looking at higher participation rates and slightly rising levels of unemployment, even though they're still low, that there is still a race for talent, and there is light on the ground on a large number of occupations.
Definitely. Guy, any thoughts regarding how the economy is influencing hiring decisions?
Well, I'm very happy to say I completely agree with Brooke about the pre-pandemic job levels. It feels like it's a harder market, but it's what we've been used to. But we were spoiled through the middle of it, whilst certainly pushed. So what we've seen is a real drop in roles that are tied to discretionary spend, I think is a nice way to put it. And I think at the same time, we do see an increased job search activity. When I talked about the network effect of members on the ecosystem, it's like, who do you know? Because there's certain safety in referrals. There's a safety in someone who's not a stranger. So as I say, more often than not, we're seeing roles being filled by referrals, not just the job posting. I think the nice way to put it is we've probably shifted from growth to efficiency. I think what Brooke was touching on there, and we've kind of been forced to shift from volume hiring into the value of hiring. We talk a lot about it's not a normal hiring freeze. It's kind of like a hiring filter, because there's as much fear about getting it wrong as it is about getting it right. And then we're seeing this across the board, and companies want to make every hire really, really count. And what we're seeing is there's such a focus on business critical roles and a fear of losing them as much as driving growth. So people are far tougher on ROI. We've seen contract and project roles on the rise. It's certainly in times of uncertainty, and I'm sure Brooke will agree, as you will, Liz, people lean more on contract and project-based roles. It's a way to stay flexible, and we're not overcommitting on fixed headcount. So it also helps people in terms of the diversity of their experience, and that's something which we've seen a whole lot more. The next generation has twice as many jobs as we've had in the past. There is a huge increase on internal mobilization and upskilling within the role. It's becoming like a key strategy for a lot of companies. As I say, when budgets tighten, I think what we've seen is the smartest employers turn inward. And more Australian companies are using both internal and external learning opportunities to think about market mapping and skills mapping as to what they do have, what they don't have, and what the next level of skills requirements is going to look like. I was talking to a company yesterday who literally said, well, who do we have already? And what do they need to be able to do to grow into this next phase of their role? And I suppose the data that supports that is that we've seen in Australia over the last year, I think it's about a 7% year-on-year focus on internal mobility. You have the skills, and quite often it's far better for retention and development if you bring people through the company instead, rather than the buy, build, borrow model. We can touch on employer brand and EVP, which are both under pressure right now because quite often EVP isn't clearly communicated. So we want to be kind of getting the best talent in the market, and you've got to talk to them early.
Yes. It's very much a retention story as well, isn't it, Guy? So so I would agree with that, definitely.
Yeah.
So if we'll stay with you guys. So if you had to give one tip to Australian employers that could make a huge difference to talent attraction, what would it be and why?
Do I have to give one or can I give more? I've got a few.
Come on, you can give more.
All right. So I think the biggest impact we've seen on the platform over the last year is videos. And there's articles all over the web at the moment about business leaders posting videos on the platform. It's literally what we talk about. It's the secret sauce unlocking accelerated engagement. When a business leader talks about the highs, the lows, their plans to win, the things that have gone wrong and what the future holds, we see a massive spike in how people respond to that company in terms of positivity and favorability. So as such, we've seen video engagement increase. I think it's 36% year on year. And I'm not gonna bark at people, but what we also see in terms of the education with the clients we see is don't post jobs that look like an internal checklist of everything you want. The company wants this, the manager wants this. I think attraction is the word that needs to be used more often. It's not a one-way conversation. So when you are writing your job ad, it's not a list of tasks. It's not a list of requirements. Make the moment compelling. Talk about how and when individuals impacted the company goals. How did the nurse save a life? How did Mary the engineer progress the technology they've worked on? How's candidate X been so successful they've been promoted? The best way to look at this is to flip the coin and think of it from your own perspective. If you're looking for a job, what the secret is like you have to understand that employees want to help you solve problems, not read things like must be a team player, because it suggests that most people aren't. So if you're able to demonstrate where you're at and where you want to go and how this role can help progress that company, you're going to see a massive shift in how people respond to you.
Love that. Yes. And Brooke, anything that you would add as well?
Oh, it's consistent with Guy's theme. My only tip was going to be don't wait it out, because I do feel sometimes businesses saying, well, the market's shifting and suddenly I'm going to have this flood of candidates coming at me. I'll just wait for that to happen and then they'll all come and it's going to be amazing. Don't wait it out. Be flexible where you need to on conditions, on pay if you have to. I do think there's a reticence in this market to up pay to get the right talent. It's still a challenge for talent. It's still a race for talent. And so to Guy's point, make sure that you are being attractive to them. You're making them want to come and work for you. Don't wait it out and wait till the market shifts and then the power base comes across to you and the talent comes that way. Get on the front foot. Likewise, Guy, I agree with that internal movement piece, but I do think for some employers who are recalibrating internally, make sure that you're not just piling on to the members that you've got and that you're risking losing them because you're just stacking it higher. So keep a very active retention strategy in play if you're going to try and internally reconstruct your workforce.
Yes.
Yep.
Thanks, Brooke. Yeah. Brooke, we'll stay with you. So we often hear about the skills of the future. So based on what you're seeing now, what are the skills of today that employers can't find fast enough?
Well, there's lots of them, as I said before, but probably the really big ones would be in where we've seen in home care, in health professionals. We've got an aging population. We've had policy shifts with the NDIS and the introduction of the NDIS, which has created an enormous amount of roles in and around those in-home care, community care spaces. And we are really struggling to find the number of people we need to deliver those services. Likewise, trades are in huge demand at the moment. Housing shortages and programs, we really don't have a lot of staff in those areas. But again, as I said, there's 30% of a variety of different occupation types, and a lot of them in white collar too, particularly around ICT as we see evolutions in AI that are really, really tight. But the biggest ones on the ground on mass, I'd have to say, we're looking at healthcare, in-home care, those spaces.
Definitely. Guy, what are your thoughts?
Well, I could not agree with you more about the frontline employment being a challenge. Interesting, Brooke, it's one of the fastest growing parts of our platform is that frontline. We've been focusing on it so much over the last 2 years. We're trying to help solve for that problem. But to the point we talked about earlier, there's a skills deficiency there. I think our CEO, Ryan Roslansky, often says, even if you aren't changing your job's most likely changing on you. And to Brooke's point, so upskilling and reskilling are the major themes in everything we do these days, and everything. It should be the forefront of every client's, every company's operating priorities. So I was looking at our skills on the rise, and let me see if I can remember this correctly. So from our skills of the future, like the fastest growing skills that people are looking for is let me see if I remember these. Adaptability, which is, there's going to be a big search on, there's going to be a big push on soft skills, which I can talk about. Large language model proficiency. So can you use ChatGPT? Can you use Copilot? Can you use a Perplexity? And what would you use them for? I mean, can you make your job quicker, faster, more productive? Strategic thinking. Now, this is the second hardest skill to backfill. When you talked about things that people can't find fast enough, people who can think about business and bring a business forward are unicorns, and a skill that you can demonstrate doing that is incredible. The second one is, I'll get this right, communication, because that is really at the forefront of every part of your business. And the last one, and the first one, should I say, is not surprising, is AI literacy, which we are seeing across the board as a basic fundamental function of how people operate these days. I think the interesting part of this around skills for the future is the AI piece. And I think we'll probably touch on that, so when we get a chance to talk about it here, is that it's not necessarily coming for your jobs, but it is coming for your tasks, is a much nicer way to put it. But it will impact so many parts of our world. All knowledge, white-collar knowledge-based workers are going to be impacted by it. So our prediction around skills of the future is that whilst your job, we're not going to have lots of people with nothing to do. Our jobs is going to currently change. So the skills of the future, if you ask me, and what I talk to my teams about, is adaptability, being comfortable in that space to move and to be adaptable and to be agile.
Yes. And so let's keep with the AI theme. So Guy, to what extent is AI changing how companies manage the employee life cycle from attraction and onboarding to performance and also exit? Okay.
So if we got like 4 or 5 hours that we can go, everybody we're going to lock in for the next till Sunday. I know we've got a long weekend. We can probably just push through till then if that's all right. It's one of the biggest questions that we asked, and we constantly ask this. And there's a couple of things I think is going to be very, very interesting. And we can break it into all different parts, but there's a 21x increase in job postings mentioning AI on our platform since 2022. That is matched by 140x increase in members adding defined AI skills to their profiles. So the taxonomy in this space is just accelerating beyond anyone's wildest imagination. And if you add this into business leaders, I think it's over 80% of the C-suite leaders we spoke to said they want to accelerate the AI adoption in their business this year because they think it's going to have a fundamental and pivotal impact on how successful they'll be. So when we talk about AI from an attraction perspective, it is a technology upgrade, but is also a genuine strategic transformation of how we work and the type of work we do. And what we're going to see in the next probably 8 to 9 months from LinkedIn is a massive new product roadmap that's going to come out. It's going to talk a lot about the agentic future, and it's going to be able to uncover skills and interests that aren't necessarily there. And it's going to make the attraction, experience substantially better, not only for the seeker, but not only for the person who is actually looking for offering the job, but the people who are looking for the job, because quite often communication is quite poor and quite difficult because we talked about the volume of things. So we're going to see the AI having a massive impact on that job seeker experience for the positivity side. I'll let Brooke.
Yeah, Brooke, anything to add there?
No question that, the ability to use AI tools is going to impact everybody's job. Your ability to use those tools is going to be pivotal to how you perform your function and your task. Question in and around how it's being used in recruitment and in the job finding process. I think there are a lot of tools now in the market that help try and screen CVs, applications, and make processes simpler. And I think it's one of the challenges that in-house teams are going to have to really focus pretty hard on in coming years, because I do think the tools are very sophisticated. And the great thing about AI tools when we're screening candidates for roles is that we can actually, if they're expertly and sophisticated in the way they use those tools, we can actually remove bias from some of the screening processes in the way that it exists right now. However, inexpert use of those kinds of tools when screening can bake in bias in a way that isn't ideal always, and it might not get the outcomes that an organisation might be looking for in and around the screening process. And I do think that's something that I think the recruitment and staffing sector are really starting to rise to that challenge, given it's what they do professionally for their jobs. They're going to really adopt those tools and understand how to use them effectively, professionally and expertly in a way that, I don't doubt that there's going to be organisations looking to try and in-house grab a tool off, product off the shelf, shove it in there and see if it gets them an outcome. And I really do think the ability of our industry, and I see a lot of people upskilling now and training in that, to use these tools very well will become huge advisory capability for them and a huge value for their clients in the kinds of candidates and outcomes they get from a hiring process.
Yeah. And also, just to add to that, of course, it doesn't remove the human element of recruitment in terms of, being able to influence, but also like all the nuances when it comes to getting the right fit for a team. So it obviously can help accelerate processes.
If anything, it actually highlights the importance of that intermediary, because I do think if there are processes like in any of the roles we can automate using AI or not fully automate, but assist us, in doing faster and quicker and more expertly. That process toward the end, though, the value add, it almost makes it more important that experts who understand cultural fit, aptitudes, capabilities, agility, to Guy's point, a lot of those soft skills is going to become more important than ever, because machines aren't going to give that, spit out that outcome.
That's true. And heading into 2030, what trends or shifts should Australian businesses be preparing for now, based on what you're seeing across the market, Brooke?
Well, I think, as I said, we got some persistent skill shortages, I think, in general. But as we transition to, the kinds of skills we're going to be looking for in the market down the track, I think we're looking at huge number of specialist skills we're going to see demand for around AI, machine learning. There'll be sustainability specialists. I think there's going to be demand there in the future. Data analysts, tech engineers, software developers. There's going to be a huge push on that front. They're already in shortage now. It's not going anywhere in the near future. And I do think we'll see, to the point that Guy made earlier, we're going to see a significant demand for micro-learning and micro-credentialing in and around use of new technology and tools in a variety of different occupation types.
Yes, for sure. Guy, what are your thoughts?
Brooke, it's like we are psychically linked.
Oh my goodness, we might actually be both connected to a similar
only do panels together from now on. So, the stuff I think is a great way to think about prepping yourself for the future is, like, to your point around the micro learning, we have a real low learning engagement, and it's one of the top challenges in terms of this upskilling and reskilling. We've been developing a learning platform that actually has an AI coach attached to it, so you can sit there and talk to the coach about what you want to learn and how you want to do it, and it builds learning pathways for you. I think that's going to bring that to life rather than sitting there and stare at things. Is going to change the way that people micro learn in a completely different way. When we think about people who are listening, I'd search on two things. I would search on how AI is helping and how you work out about candidate cheating. So making sure that, to your point, people who are experts in this probably have a way of making sure that their resumes is come to the top. So get your head around that bit, and also have a look at the Microsoft Skills Agent about how you do workforce planning for the future, because being able to know your business and know your people is going to be fundamental in how you be a success. Now, 2030. It's something like 70% of the skills we talked about are going to be different by then. So it's no one really knows the answer to this question, to be honest, Liz. And I think if they do, then they're probably not being truthful for you. But I think the AI augmented hiring is going to become very much the norm. As I say, it's not coming for your jobs, but it's going to come for your tasks. Like the tractor did to the farming industry, where there's 100 people and then 99 people got sacked. They didn't lose their work, they just did different work. And I think AI is going to impact every knowledge worker. Think about software designers, software engineers having to be retrained. Professional photographers and designers, their role dramatically changed when ChatGPT released images. Law, where it's about building precedents, where quite often the AI will be able to do that for you. But it is about, to Brooke's point, it makes the human element more meaningful and more purposeful. Technology in terms of augmented AI is not going to replace recruiters. It's certainly not going to replace humans when it comes to the TA function. But we are seeing those who use AI are generally outperforming those that don't. And we've seen that in the market. In Australia, we have quite a low adoption in terms of where we are with AI. We're still sort of playing around with it. No one really putting any policy or any compliance against it. But I think if you can start developing people's skills, do the heavy lift now, and push through in terms of understanding technology, the micro learning on to keep those up to date is much easier. Our fear is that there's a big skills gap between how people use tools now for hiring and for sourcing and for looking for talent, and then the skill that's going to be too big. And the reason why I'm saying this is because for the TA teams listening, or for the HRDs, you are at the pointy end of the spear, because not only are you trying to learn AI for yourselves, your business leader is going to want AI to be a large part of your business. So you're not learning just for yourselves, but you're also responsible for hiring the AI-enabled workforce for the future. And if you think about how you break your tasks down into an everyday business, you will then get ahead on, by 2030, you'll be ahead on what agents can do for you. We are moving rapidly towards this agent-based future where you have a digital double of yourself, and it will take on your tasks. It will take, hopefully my digital double has a bit more hair than me, but it will take on your task or your multiple tasks, and it's going to automate things and achieve the goals that you as an individual, as a business, wants to achieve. Now, if you're not prepping yourself between now and when this really kicks in, you're going to have a problem trying to keep up. So my advice to those getting ready for 2030, sit down and think about what are the most non-human or seemingly mundane activities, because you will be able to use technology to pick that up for you. The last little bit I will talk about is that the skills first hiring is going to overtake the credentials-based hiring, which I think Brooke touched on earlier. Yeah. The reason why I'm saying this is that over the next 2 years, we're going to see a big changing of the guard at the C-level. Gen X are stepping down. Finally, we get to retire, and millennials are taking over. And the reason why this is important, because millennials had twice as many jobs as their Gen X predecessors. So diversity and experience is vastly superior to those who are doing the job before. And as such, they're going to have a far stronger focus on developing soft skills. And this is going to come through in that skills first hiring mentality. So upskill, reskill, think about what goes into the next level of hiring.
Yes, agree. And yeah, if you're not currently embracing AI, definitely need to get on board. Yes, for sure. Thank you so much to Brooke and Guy for your time today and for giving us incredible insights on the market. If anyone watching today is wanting to reach out or get in touch with Brooke or Guy from LinkedIn, you can visit our website and also look at the comments below. So thank you once again to Brooke and Guy.
Really enjoyed it. So Brooke and I come as a pair now.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, that's it. I can just switch the words from now on.
You should.
Have a great long weekend.
Thank you. I really enjoyed today. Thanks a lot.
Just a reminder, thank you. Just a reminder that all the insights shared today are based off our 2025 employment and salary trends report. So if you'd like a deeper dive into salaries, benefits, and workplace trends across your market, you can request a copy by scanning the QR code on the screen now or clicking on the link in the comments below. Lastly, if you're looking to grow your career or build your team with the right talent, then People to People can help. As an award-winning recruitment agency, we operate across Australia, New Zealand, and the UK with specialist teams in every major market. And in South Australia, Edge Recruitment are Adelaide's leading specialist in property, real estate and general administration roles. So contact us you can see those details on the screen. So, and there's links available in the comments to reach out to our team today. So that's it for our webinar today. So thank you very much for joining us for our special on the Australian market update. We'll see you next time.